Hello and welcome guys, it's Gugus Axie, and today we're gonna go through the tier list of Axie Infinity cards in Season 19. This tier list has been prepared by Indes and Axie GG squad over at Axie Tech websites. So we're gonna go through these cards and I'm gonna give you my opinion on all of these cards as well as whether I agree with Indes' opinion. So starting right at the bottom, we have the FT, and there's only 5 cards here. Silent Whisper, I think this card has no place in the game. It was never used in any kind of a play. It is range, 40 shield, not enough, and it only heals the teammate in front of you. Now with the current positioning in Axie Infinity, healing the teammate in front of you for 190 for 1 energy is just not going to do enough, and it's also a mouthpiece and you can get much better mouthpiece cards. And now on all of the healing cards like the Strawberry Shortcake, like the Shitsack, like the Silent Whisperer and Rosebud are all plant cards. I think it would be useful to have one healing card on something that's a little bit speedier, maybe like an aqua card that heals, maybe a bird card that heals your allies as well, so we can use that as a utility card. Now Carrot, I very much so agree with it being E tier, not F tier, but E tier is the lowest. Why are people fascinated with Carrot? Because it gives you that extra energy, right? And I understand you probably see it a lot when you are a scholar on that low MMR, but it is quite useless because it's dependent on your opponent and it is very easy to outplay. Someone can attack into you, break your energy, break your shield, you're gonna get energy, right? And then he can steal that away from you. So he can go Cactus and then he can go Serious and he's gonna steal that energy from you. And 70 damage, 40 shield, nowhere near good enough. If it was 90-40 like Hotbot has, then maybe it would be higher up in the tier. Featherfan, not even gonna mention it, it's just a useless card. Gerbil, again, if you're going for a backdoor, you don't want to have your backdoor on a tail because you can get much better cards like the Hare or like the Twin Tail in the current meta. Tadpole, not even gonna mention it. Koi is the most played cards as a tail on an aqua. So if you're not playing a Nemo or if you're not playing a Koi, you are doing something wrong. Now moving over to the D tier, we have plenty of cards here. Onko, unfortunately, is not as playable as it should be, with it being 30 attack and 100 shield. It has received some buffs, but because it's a horn card, you can get very high damage horn cards like the Dual Blade, like the Cerastes, like the Incisor, cards that have a little bit more playability. And again, Pooflink is a reptile card. Reptiles are inevitably quite slow, and if you want to have utility, if you want to be healing, if you want to be applying stench, what you need to be doing is using that at the start of the rank, and those cards are inherently slow. So if that was an aqua card or a bird card, maybe it would be a little bit more playable, but with it being reptile and with it being a horn, it's still not as good as it should be. Strawberry Shortcake, for 2 energy, the only card that is 2 energy. It has seen some use towards the end of last season, but in this season in the backdoor meta, you will never be able to trigger this because people will just target your Axie that has the Strawberry Shortcake. Shitsack has been seeing some love lately. Not sure why it's put at D tier because it is a back card, so it cannot be disabled. I'm not sure I agree with this one. I think it belongs in C tier or even a little bit higher, maybe B on some occasion. Of course, it's a card. Well, what did I do? It's a card that is situational, right? It's not always going to be good. You can't play it blindly, but it does allow you to heal up in those 1v1 scenarios. It's not going to be good on the front lane, it's mostly going to be good on the back lane, so I would put it a little bit higher just because it's a back card, right? Potato Leaf is counterproductive because this card cannot be targeted by aquatic cards if this Axie has teammates remaining. What does that mean? That means you are avoiding damage. So why would you have 80 shield on a card that is supposed to avoid damage, right? This should be like 110 and 20, and that way you can avoid that damage and then still deal some damage in return. Bamboo Shoots, unfortunately, is not as playable because it's in a chain. If it was in a combo, I think it would see a lot more love because of the amount of shield that you can put on your front lane plant, making it beefier and beefier. Caterpillars, very hard to trigger that what's it called, that utility. With it being 150, you can get better cards like the Acro, right? Acro is just so much better because you can speed yourself up. So card appeal is not good enough. If it was 110, 120, then it obviously would have been amazing. Or if it was 2 fear to shielded targets, then it would have been good as well. And same story as with the Unco, Stench just doesn't have a place in the game when it is played on these slower Axies. Raven just doesn't have enough damage, and applying Jinx. Nobody's pretty much playing Ronin right now in the meta. So Raven is quite useless, and I think it should be 120 and 30. Like Aqua cards have Blue Moon, they have Oranda, so I think Raven should be 120. Feather Spear and Cloud both have 50 shield, and you just don't need that much shield on your bird. You want to be as quick as you can, and you want to deal as much damage as you can. So having those 50 shield cards is just not going to be good enough. Timber is actually interesting. I didn't see much use of Timber, but I think it can be good on, let's say, an Aqua. Especially that there are many 2-plant builds right now. I still wouldn't put it any higher than C tier, but it is somewhat playable right now because it has received that buff going to 80-80 rather than 50-100. Nutcracker, again, an underwhelming tail card where you have Shiba and you have the hair, right? Mary, same story, 20% shield to this Axie when played in a chain. Nobody is going to be using double Mary to get more shield on a beast. Same story goes for a beast as it goes for a bird. You want to deal as much damage as you can in a short amount of time and as little energy, so going for Mary, going for Nutcracker is not going to be the case. Now Imp is in a very weird spot because if you go for Imp Ronin, is a very good combo, right? You are a little bit card dependent, but you do have that energy gain and that 100% crit strike. But if you draw a double Imp and you don't have a Ronin, or if you use your Ronins early on and you have Imps left over in your card deck after you play your Ronins, then this is a very useless card. So it would either need higher shield or a little bit more damage to still be viable when you don't have the Ronin to pair it up with. Last 4 cards are all Aqua cards. Shoalstar, I thought Shoalstar is actually going to get a buff last patch because Oranda is obviously better, right? Oranda has 120 and 30 shield. It doesn't have as good as utility as Shoalstar does, but I think Shoalstar should be bumped to 120 and then maybe 15 or 20 shield, because this is actually a very good utility, making sure that your opponent cannot enter last stand. But because we are in a meta that we are, Shoalstar is just simply not good enough. You're always going to play around the Purge. Same thing, I think it should be higher damage or higher shield, prioritizing the idle target with 2 additional cards. This is very hard to pull off. You're going to need a lot of cards, so the reward for 120 is just not good enough, and you can play Blue Moon, which has 120 and 30. Navaga, again, tail cards, you're just gonna play Koi or an Emo. Catfish doesn't have enough shield for the heal. Like even Anemone has 80 and 35, and that heals you for 100, right? So going for the Catfish just not gonna be a good choice. If that was 40, maybe 50 shield, then we can start talking. Now moving on to the C tier, this is where we're gonna see a lot of the cards that you might be seeing in the meta right now. Tri-Spikes, obviously not the best card for your back on a reptile, or a reptile card on your back, because it only has 80 shield, 80 attack and 50 shield, and it is quite easy to outmaneuver because it skips the closest target with the lowest shield, right? So it's quite easy to outmaneuver, and then if you miss, you don't deal that much damage. Toothless Bite, I wouldn't agree with it being C tier because it is really, really good in the current meta, but if you look at the card as a whole, then obviously it's not that great. But in the current meta, it's obviously A tier. It's better than a shrimp, right? Tiny Dino, again, for the tail, you can play the twin tail, which deals a lot of damage for a 0 cost, so having Tiny Dino is not going to be that good. And then you usually want to play it on the back, and you want to wait for round 5 to deal that extra damage. And in the current meta, if you wait till round 5, you're just simply going to be dead. Snake Jar, just a little bit underwhelming. I think the utility that it has, that you cannot attack the shield, is very, very good, but with it being 80-20, it's just in a very weird spot. Like, it feels good, but not as good as it should to put on your team. Red Ear, a very good high shield card. I would put it a little bit high. I'm not sure why it's not seeing more use than Pumpkin, but if you are going to go for a shielded front lane or mid lane, then you're obviously going to go for the Bone Sail because you get extra card draw as well as some damage threat. In Scissor, actually, I would put it in B tier. I think it's a very, very good card. It can go on many Axies. Iguana, I would actually put a little bit lower. It is a tail that's just pretty much bad, right? It's not gonna see that much use. Green Thorns, a little bit card dependent, and you're gonna have to need a specific Axie to trigger that one. So with it being a 0 cost, it's still decent, and it is seeing some use, like let's say on the Disablesaurus, but not good enough to be any higher. Just simply Bidance is better, right? Gila, now Gila is very interesting. I like this card a lot, but I can never find a use for it, and that's because it's in a very weird spot to trigger that attack minus. First of all, you need to poison someone, which is going to be difficult because you either need to play a Yam and they need to play into you, or you're going to play a Backdoor or a Grass Snake, right? And both of these cards are tail cards. All poison are on tail cards. So if you're trying to play a Gila, you cannot play a self-sufficient Axie that can poison and then play Gila for the attack minus. So if that was on a back, let's say, that would be very, very good. But because it's on a tail, it's just not seeing enough use. But based on the stats themselves, 155, it is a very, very good card on its own, and it belongs in a C tier. Watermelon, just straight up bad. Rosebud, same thing, just straight up bad because they are horn cards on a plant. You can go for something much better. Mint is just the worst version of a Bidance. If you are going for a Mint, it's very hard to trigger it in the current meta where everyone has a backdoor. So this should be removing debuffs from just your Axies in general rather than from the teammate directly in front of you. So if you are playing Mint on the front, it should be able to remove a stun from your back lane or remove a poison from your mid lane. That way it would be a lot more of a utility card and more of a support card rather than just a shield on its own. Spiky Wing, it's a very specific card, but a good one nevertheless. You can be killing some immortal plants with that one. It doubles the amount of damage that you deal into shield on a target, right? So it's a very, very specific but a good 0 cost. Lagging, unfortunately, fell off a little bit from the Terminator build, right? But it is still very good 0 cost that can slow your opponent down. Gravelant on a specific Axie can annoy the hell out of your opponent, especially in lower MMRs. I'm going to start to have skipping some of these, but when it comes to all of these bird cards, there's simply better alternatives for them. Trump, never going to be triggered. Swallow, you can go for the hair on a bird, or you can go for the post fight, which is a 0 cost, and all of these cards have better substitutions for them. Shiba, same thing, you can just go for the hair. Nutcracker, same thing, you can just go for Axie Kiss. Ronin has to be played with Imp, otherwise you don't get any energy, and you also get no shield. Rice, also a little bit too low of a shield. Confident, not as good for a mouth card. For a 0 cost because you don't really need the morale to be that high. Axie Kiss, Little Branch. Axie Kiss is quite decent, but obviously Goda is going to be the better one as it has a little bit more utility. And Little Branch, well, you can go for Dual Blade, so why would you go for Little Branch? Teal Shell, Radju, Goldfish, and Babylonia. Goldfish has been nerfed, otherwise it would have been higher in the tier list, but all of these have a better card for the position that they are being played in. Now, when it comes to the B tier, all of these cards are very, very good, but they need to be played in a specific Axie, in a specific composition to make it to work, simply to work, right? When you move on to the A tier and when you move on to the S tier, those cards will be played no matter what the Axie is, no matter what the team is. Well, a little bit matter what the team is, but B tier, good cards, but have to be built well. So if you look at the reptile cards, Wall Gecko is going to prevent you from getting one-shotted, especially on a mid reptile. Scaly Spoon together with Indian Star is actually a very good reflective combo. Grass Snake, a good 0 cost that has high shield, applies poison. Croc, allowing you to outplay your opponent's Aqua because you slow him down if you have it on a Dusk. Bumpy can be comboed with the Bone Sail, but doesn't trigger anymore, but it still can be comboed with Sponge, and it just simply reduces a lot of damage from your opponent if he is playing, let's say, Fairball, Twin Tail, stuff that deals damage often, but it's not high damage, right? So you're going to be, percentage-wise, you're going to be removing a lot of that damage. Kotaro, you're usually going to go for Tiny Turtle. Razorbite is actually really, really good for the stats that it has, and it being a reptile card. Scaly Spear, here a little bit too dependent on your other Axies. Yam is still very good for your front lane, for your mid lane. You're always going to get value from Yam, especially lower down on the MMR when people don't play Bidens that often. Watering Can probably works better on the lower MMRs where you see a lot of double aqua teams, and it is also depending on your opponent, right? So I would rather go for Turnip so that I can snipe a bird myself rather than for Watering Can where I have to wait for my opponent to attack into me. Herbivore is actually really good because of the stats themselves, right? Pretty much 90% of the games that you play, you're gonna see a plant, whether that's front or mid. You will see a plant, so going for Herbivore usually very good. Hatsune, again, has to be played on a mid plant or a back plant, but can see some use. All of these bug cards played on a bug are gonna be very good. Now, Winkhorn, not usually played on a bird. It's more of a utility card that you slap on something else that has higher damage, like the mech, like the Dusk. Little Owl, simply underwhelming. You would rather go for a Toothless Raid. Kestrel is good. It has high damage, but you can go for the Eggshell, which gives you more playability. Pigeon Post, same thing. You have to pair it up with the Eggshell to work. The last one is actually very high damage, and you can pair that up with the Tri-Feather to remove the debuff or a balloon, and it's gonna nuke your opponent's mech and beast. Double Talk has been nerfed a little bit too much, same with Kaku. Risky Beast, Dual Blade, Jaguar, all very good cards. Same with Cottontail. I would actually move them up to A tier. I'm not sure how many cards he wanted in A tier, but all of these three I would put in A tier because you can slap them on an aqua, you can slap them on a bird, and those are high damage cards that will work very well, that have, like the Jaguar, they have above 150 total combined stats. Now all of these aqua cards are good, but they're obviously not top of the cards in Axie Infinity. Like, you're not gonna slap a let's say a Nemo on a mech, right? But you're blindly gonna slap a Twin Tail on a mech or on an aqua because it's simply going to work. But all of these have some uses. All of these are quite good if you find the place for them. Now moving on to the A tier, those cards are usually good no matter what you play. I wouldn't agree with Popeye being here. It's a good zero cost, but it's nowhere near as good as the Twin Tail. And in the current meta, Popeye is just simply not going to be as good. Tiny Turtle, you can slap that on a Dusk on a Reptile pretty much blindly, and it's always going to give you value, especially if you have a zero cost to pair it up with. Zigzag Series, best mouth cards that you can get. Cattail or the Cattail in the current meta is going to give you a lot of value. Same goes for the Bidens as a high shield zero cost that removes the debuffs. Pumpkin, just always good, right? Might Bite, I think people are sleeping on Might Bite actually. It's a very high damage zero cost card. Scarab is gonna save you a lot of games. There's an increasing number of healing plants appearing, double anemone teams, as well as a mosquito backlane. So having Scarab on your team is gonna be very good. Sandal, I think Sandal should actually be nerfed. This is a one card that counters a whole class of cards, right? So having Sandal, I think a little bit too overpowered. Pinsir, Leafbug, just very good zero cost cards. Cute Bunny as a utility in a specific team can be very good, but because it's a very specific card, I would move it down to a B tier. And then Tri-Feather with Eggshell deals 100 damage for free for zero cost into a B-star mech, right? So it's very good if you manage to navigate it. Wait, post-fight, high damage, zero cost again. Peacemaker, the best mouthpiece that you can get right now on a bird. Balloon, Eggshell all give you outplay potential as well as utility. And Pokey, Goda, and Furble, I mean, those cards just demolish when you slap them on a mech. And Pokey, especially if you slap it on a mech or an aqua that is paired up with two bugs. Double anemone always works well. If you guys are starting into Axie Infinity, don't just buy one anemone. You're always going to need the double anemone to trigger. That way you're going to heal for 100 health rather than just 50 health. And in the S tier, we have cards that work insanely well in the current meta, and those are Cerastes. That is true, it deals 130% damage if target is faster than this Axie, and it also has high shield. So this card is going to deal 150 damage into a bird or an aqua while still providing you with 60 shield, right? So this is a very good card that you can slap on pretty much any Axie, and it's going to work as long as it's slow. Bone Sail, always giving you that card. It's just a better pumpkin, right? It's less depending on your opponent. It's still a little bit dependent on your opponent, but if he doesn't play anything, you can just slap him for 80 damage. Hotbot disabling the mouthpiece is going to win you a lot of 1v1 scenarios, especially on those immortal plants. Cactus, after receiving that 5 damage buff, is just simply superior when it comes to the horn damage dealing card. Twin Tail, highest damage 0 cost currently in the game. That doesn't take a lot to trigger. Hero, same thing, high damage 0 cost on and back. That's where you usually want your 0 cost, especially if you're playing an aqua. You want to have Koi on the tail and you want to have a hero. And then hair acro combo, if you are playing a speedy aqua or a bird, you want to have that hair so that you can draw an extra card. And then if you don't have the Koi to speed yourself up, you want to go for the acro, which is going to provide you with 50 shield and also quite decent damage into plants and reptiles. So in general, I agree with this tier list. There's a couple of things that would move up and down, but in general, these cards are going to be very, very decent when it comes to slapping it on pretty much anything, and that's what you're going to see in the top meta, people utilizing these cards as good as they can. There's obviously some specific builds that are going to utilize more A tier cards rather than just focus on the S tier. If you guys want to check this tier list down, there's going to be a link down in the description. You can get a couple of ideas from it. I hope you have enjoyed this little bit of a review for season 19 best cards in Axie Infinity. If you did, let me know in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the channel for more Axie Infinity content. Give this video a thumbs up and I'll see you in the next one.